Nerdchachos, how's it going? So thanks for coming along again today. Welcome to another Let's Play episode of Planet Zoo. And we're back in our zoo, Roars and Claws. And in the previous episode you would have seen us building the exhibit attached to the flamingo habitat, where we added crocodiles and frogs and everything. And so this is the zoo as it stands so far. I'll do a real quick tour. So you can see what's going on in a second. I think in this episode I'd like to take it a little bit easier. This build was intense, and we're on episode 8 now. And each episode takes a full day to record, even though it's done in a style of build, update, build, update, build, update, talk through. It takes an entire day of hours and hours and hours of work to get an episode together. So I think I'm starting to get a little bit of burnout, and I just want to sort of take it a little bit easy before moving on to doing stuff like the giraffe exhibit and everything. Purely because I still want to put my best work into it, and I think that I'm in danger of not doing that if I don't sort of take a step back. So this episode's going to be a little bit looser, a little bit less achieved, and I'm going to spend a little bit less time on doing it as well. It doesn't mean to say that it's not going to be a full episode. I'm still going to get stuff done, but it's not going to be as intense as the previous episodes where we've built big structures. So this is the zoo as it stands at the moment. So here's our entrance, with our ticket area and our information area looking awesome in the sun. I really do like how this has turned out, especially now we've got the bits behind it to start to flesh out the view, the sightline. This is our backstage area where we've got the a tree in the way, where we've got the admin building, and we've got our backstage area where all of the magic happens. Then we've got our flamingo habitat, massive habitat, and then now look, they're replicating massively, and they're really noisy. They're really loud, but it's great because it's starting to really flesh out the area now, and it's starting to, yeah, it's good. And then we've also got our crocodile and general frogs and stuff habitats. So crocs and croaks, where we came in, and this was our last episode. This is what we built. This is what we built last time. And then we've also got a food area over here, just at the end of it, and then there's plans for an exhibit here that's going to have our aardvarks, anteaters, and a pangolin. And then over here we've got slithers and scales, and that's our reptile house that we built very early on. Very small reptile house that's got our Nile monitor and our Komodo dragon in it, and a couple of snakes as well, just to keep it going. And then we've also, on the other side, we've got our tortoises. So there's our tortoises there, and I think they're about to fight. You need to stop that right now. So we've got Galapagos tortoises on one side and Aldabras on the other. And again, we go into the reasoning as to why they're together and go into the build of that in another episode. And then we've also got our gift shop as well, quite nicely situated at the front of the park, opposite the tortoises. And that's our zoo. That's our zoo so far. And I'm really pleased with how this has come along. I didn't think it would look this good. I thought it was going to be a bit rubbish. I thought it was going to be a bit pants. But what I'd like to do this episode, like I say, I want to take it a little bit easier, but still getting stuff done. And there's a few things that are bugging me about the stuff that we've built so far. This front area. I need to get this front area sorted and ready for expansion this way, because I don't know if I want to put a second entrance in sort of here, because I'd like to have a massive giraffe habitat that's got a big building, something on the similar scale as these sort of buildings, the Crocs and Croaks building, where it's going to be a restaurant, and there's going to be an area that you can feed giraffes, or watch them be fed at least. So that needs a bit of planning, and I don't know whether I want it in like a semicircle shape or an inverted semicircle shape yet. I need to have a think. But anyway, I don't know if I want the second entrance along this side, similar style entrance but this way, so that I can then expand it out this way to have elephants and pandas and things this side. Your dangerous cats and animals and wild animals along the back end here. And then the exhibit that's got your pangolins and aardvarks and anteaters this side. So it means that we've got aardvarks down here and lemurs down here that need moving, and all of this needs shoring up. So I think this is what I'm going to do this episode. I'm going to shore up the car park, shore up how I want this front area to look, get this bit sorted, move the bits out that I need to, so that we're in a better position, then we can start doing the drafts. So with that in mind, I will leave you to it, and I will see you in the first update. All right, update time. True to form, it's raining. Oh, it rains so much in this zoo. So here we go. It's a small update. It's been a lot of work because it's getting this bit at the top right. That's been the issue, and I've toyed with having a second entrance, as you can see from the terrain and everything here. I've toyed with having a second entrance down here, and then how that layout's going to go, and I can't seem to be able to piece it together in my head as to where everything is going to be. So for now, I've just gotten rid of it, and I need to let this be organic rather than trying to plan. I think that's going to be the best way of doing it. All I do know is I definitely want my giraffes in this area, and I definitely want the building for the giraffes area to be here. So I expect I'll start to line out where that building is going to be and where the space is going to be. And then opposite that, I do want the elephants, and I also want pandas. So I know what's going in this area. I just don't know what the configuration of that area is going to be just yet. So what I did is I turned my attention on the llama habitat, and so I've moved this fence out of the way for a second just so I can put these paths in. I don't know if this bit's going to cause a bottleneck, so I don't. It doesn't here, so I don't think it will here either. And especially as we've still got these paths to act as runoff as well, so we should be all right, I think. But anyway, the llama habitat is coming together quite nicely. I've put the keeper's hut inside here, hidden away with the shop and everything, so it's out of the way, and it's all part of the staff facilities that were already well hidden and well accounted for in terms of the negative radius and everything in this back area. Rather than putting it over here, because then it meant I needed a path that fed to it, and I just couldn't keep it clean. But I wanted to put a shed in. And I wanted to do a wood shed, but all of the wood is either, as we already know from the crocodiles, is either the Arctic wood, which isn't really appropriate to the theme, or the really clean-looking, well-kept wood. And I want to save that for a building or buildings that I'm doing later on where it's going to be better used. So I'm going for the metal instead. Didn't want to use concrete because I've used that far too much over on the other side. It's a bit material overkill. But what I wanted to do, and I know llamas don't need shelter, and they don't need much looking after. I mean, they've been sat over there since the very beginning, just happily out in the open with few enrichment items and few food sources and whatever. They look after themselves. But I wanted to have this shed, and I wanted to have this idea of a bit of a backstage area where they would come in and out, and then a ramp, and then comes out to the roadway. So that's what I've built in to this area. It also helps me to increase the size of the habitat, and it also adds to a little bit of the realism as well. Don't know if the shed's a bit too big, but it's fine. It's good. The llamas are quite big. They're quite chunky animals, and so that's where I'm sort of heading at the moment. This is going to be the llama enclosure, and then we're going to have the car park sorted. The car park's not going to be tarmacked. It's going to be stone and mud and whatever, separated by logs with parking spaces. Only because I don't want to use the tarmac because of the lag created in the pathfinding. If you use too much of the pathway, you start to drag the game down really, really quickly. And it's the same principle as to why I didn't completely path tarmac all of this area, and just use the concrete pad to represent the area instead. So very similar. In fact, I might. No, I'm going to keep it as gravel and keep it as low maintenance as I can. So yeah, so that's the first update. That's the llama habitat as it stands at the moment. And like I say, I'm going to carry on working on this bit. I'm going to move the aardvarks, and then I'll catch you on the next update. All right, so the llamas are in their new home, and they seem to be enjoying it. Look, playing around in the background. Yeah, so they're not in the front of the zoo anymore. I've now completely moved them. So I now just need to start the process of the vegetation and the foliage that's going to be separating them from the road and the car park and the pavement and whatever. But for now, they are happily in their new home. Look at them. So I built the shed. I wanted it to be a bit of a monstrosity masterpiece, if you like. So it's this metal shed. It's got this corrugated plastic roof. As cheap as can be. Like I said in the earlier update, they don't actually serve much purpose. They don't require any kind of shelter or any kind of hard shelter, but it's just there for the sake of being there. But I decided to put this glass trim in across the top, partly because it's quite nice to see them from the top as a player, but also because that's what they would have in real life, right? They would want some kind of habitat or some kind of area where they can still get the sun but get out of the rain. And I've put some heaters inside as well, so that when it gets too cold for them, they can seek shelter inside. And I've also included this flat roof area as well, which would be like a vet pen area. It's where they would herd the animals in and out, and then they would come into this area here. So, like I say, I just need to do the touching up of this area when I come around to do the car park, bring the wall down and stuff. I've also used the terrain as well to paint where I've watched them walk the most, and it seems to be these sorts of areas are where they would hang out most. So that's where they would start to wear down the grass, and that's where they would start to sort of like make a mess, if you like. I might need to do some more down here. I've noticed that since I've put some enrichment items down this way, they seem to be coming around this way. I've dotted around some vegetation just to give it a bit of fluff, just to fluff out the actual habitat a little bit. Just the bracken and the holly. They seem to be relatively happy with those as plants in principle. So they're going. And we didn't do that when they were in the front of the zoo. We just left it as a completely blank habitat. But now they seem to be happy. They seem to be attracting more donations. More donations from guests and stuff. So. And I've also just varied the terrain ever so slightly. I haven't done masses, but I haven't kept it flat. I wanted it to undulate slightly. I wanted it to be a little bit sort of hilly, but not too hilly that it's too much. We're not talking mountains; we're just talking hills. But at the same time, from a guest view, it also creates a little bit of an obscure view of the actual perimeter fence. And the perimeter fence on the outside. So it just sort of obscures that a little bit more. So yeah, so that's the llama habitat. And I've also just started the process of decorating the bits along here as well. I still don't know what's going to happen up this area. I definitely want it to be a plaza. I think my next step here is to plan out where I want the building and how I want it to be for the giraffes, because this is going to be the giraffe area. Yeah. Next step though is to move the aardvarks. Need to get those out of the way so that I can start decorating all of this area and getting it finished. So that, I think, will be the next update, which is now. All right, time for a little bit of progress. Only a little bit this time because I've had to do some zoo admin, so I've needed to get some more animals, refill all of the exhibits, just do a bit of franchise admin just to make sure that everything's done. I've stopped the flamingos from breeding because they're now starting to overpopulate the exhibit, the habitat, so I've now stopped them from breeding and just stuff like that. So yeah, but I've moved the aardvarks. And I decided to put them down here for the time being. Now that's purely because nobody was coming down into this area. They had no reason to. There's nothing down here for them to come and see. So I've put the aardvarks down in this area just to draw a few people this way, tempt them into using the shop and whatever. So that's now completely done, dusted. I'm ready for us to start our big build up here with the pangolins and the anteater. So the other bit that I've done, a little bit of touch-up work around the outside perimeter of the actual zoo itself. So I've just put some flowers across here. I've extended the wall and made the path carry on. And you will now see that I've also started work on this middle area as well. But this middle area is going to just be car park, so I need to sort sort out where the cars are going to come in, and I think it's going to come to about a roundabout here. And we've done this bit. So the very front entrance of the zoo, this takes a long time actually, so much longer than I thought it was going to. So putting in the curb and the railings right the way across and all the way down, and we now have a big sign. We've got a big sign for Roars and Claws. So just as you drive in, you'll see the sign for Roars and Claws as you come in. Done some landscaping along here, and again I've just used the terrain technique just to just to give it a bit of height variation, etc. I brought the fence right across, and put the lighting as well, just to make sure that that's all consistent. So the idea is that you'd be driving along this area, and you'd be able to see the entrance on the right hand side. You carry on driving around, past the perimeter of the zoo, and you'd get to a point where you would need to go around and go into the actual car park, and then you would come go out of your cars and then come up to the entrance area here. So that's just a little update. So this area is now ready for transforming into the car park area. The llamas are now happy in their habitat, and I actually quite like how this is turned out from the terrain and the vegetation perspective, because of the shadows that are cast this time of day. When the sun starts to come down, you can see that there's the long shadows. So that's looking good. Liking how that's looking. So that's pretty much it for this update. I just wanted to do a real quick one just to show you the small amount of progress that's done for a large amount of work. But it makes it worth its while, because this area is now in a position where it's no longer barren and bland. It's now as I would expect it to be for the entrance of a zoo. So now it's gone dark. Now I'm just going to get the car park area done, and that should then complete this build, or this part of the episode. Cool. Here's the next update. Alright, so here we are in one completed car park. So I've done quite a lot of work on this area, in terms of making the car park look like a proper car park, but making it look like a dirt car park. Like I said in the last update, a couple of reasons for it. The pathing system absolutely hates being used for car parking reasons, and there's no point wasting those kind of resources on making this a pavement car park or a tarmac car park. We don't have a tarmac terrain that I can use, and I didn't want to overkill on the concrete pad, so I settled for this idea of mud car park and a dirt car park instead. So I've just used the terrain painting tools just to paint down where all the cars would normally be, and then I've just used it also just to accent some of the parking spaces, but not all. Obviously, it would be a differing kind of wear and tear based on where vehicles normally park and where they don't, whatever. And then around the area of the entrance bit with the pedestrian crossings, that's all worn down because people would obviously be walking to and fro all the time. Now, the car park itself is a bit of an odd one, because you would think that a zoo that would have such modern infrastructure and such beautiful buildings and such very intricate, well built, well put together stuff wouldn't have such a crummy car park. So it's kind of a bit of a trade-off with what we've got in game versus what's achievable and saving park count and stuff. So it's kind of, there is a precedent for it. I've seen zoos and I've seen theme parks that are exactly the same, very well put together, very much money spent on the infrastructure and very much money spent on the attraction within the ticketed area, but the actual car park itself sucks. And that's always been the case. And there could also be reasons why this has to be dirt. Like it could be drainage reasons where you can't put concrete down because the area would flood. I mean, ultimately, we don't know what's the other side. We do, because we've got a game world, but we don't know what's the other side of this to know whether this has to be kept as dirt and has to be kept as some kind of soil or field for whatever reason. It might not even be their field. They might be renting it off of a farmer and they're not allowed to they're not allowed to pave over it. So there's a whole load of precedents set for this kind of thing, and I think that's quite important to the lore of the zoo that we're building. That's taken into account. This car park is crummy. We know it's crummy, and there are reasons for it. Drainage, renting the field, those kinds of things. And so that's kind of what I've stuck with. I finished off the road, put the markings in, and made it sort of come all the way around. And I spent, and you'll be able to see it here in the scarring and the landscape. I spent an absolute age. It must have been 2 or 3 hours toying around with the idea of a second entrance, bringing this plaza around, having steps, doing it in a slightly different configuration to the front entrance here, in the sense that I wanted it was a copy of the ticket booths. It's what you would expect, but I wanted them at ground level, and you then walked up steps or the ramp to get to the main plaza area that would be here, and then you would have some kind of ticket office down this side, and then you'd have a food place this side, and it just didn't feel right. As I was putting it together, it started to come together, but it didn't really have a purpose. There was no reason for us to have a second entrance here, and the more I thought about it, and the more I started to build, I started to question this whole area here. Why did we spend so long perfecting the view, perfecting what's going to go beyond here in terms of how it's going to go back up into a hill and hide the backstage area? So why did we spend so long perfecting this view that we've got here to then go and ruin it with a second entrance over the other side? And so I then did some research into other zoos, layouts and all of that sort of stuff, and realised actually you probably wouldn't have a second entrance. I know that Chessington World of Adventures in Surrey, here in the UK, has a zoo and a theme park, and they have two entrances, and they're very close to each other. So there are examples out there where it would work, and you have two entrances. But for this particular zoo, I don't think it would work. So I've scrapped the idea of having a second entrance, and I think I'm going to go with an exhibit instead. It's going to be a habitat instead that would come around. Haven't decided what it would be. It might even be, depending on the size of the zoo, we might even need to put a monorail station or some kind of transport capacity in here to go from here to the back of the zoo or around. So I'm going to leave this space for now, but what you can see now is I've started to plan out the next areas. I had a bit of a fit of inspiration to say, right, let's see where this is now going to go from here. So I still want this plaza area. This is an important plaza area, and this is going to end up being the panda exhibit. So I just need to flesh out whether this space is going to be big enough, whether I need to make it slightly bigger. But ultimately, this is going to be the viewing area, and it's going to be like a relatively short building, I think, that sort of spans across in this dog leg, and then this side is where the giraffes exhibit is going to be. So this is going to be like a viewing area and restaurant area, food area, where you can look out at the actual exhibit itself and look out at the giraffes. And then this backstage area will also double up as like a feeding area, and you'll have an area where you can view them being fed as well. So it would need to be quite tall, and I want this to be glass fronted along at least these three sides, looking out to it's not a savannah, is it? But looking out to the giraffes. Placement, I'm not 100% set on. I need to make sure that the actual land is going to be big enough to house a giraffe for what they've got, because they do take quite a lot of room. So that's where I'm thinking at the moment. And then this path is going to come around this way, and then down here are going to be the elephants. So it's sort of bringing itself back round and then back down this way to where we're going to have lions and tigers and stuff. So you're sort of coming around this way for tamer animals, crocodile, water-based stuff, and then around this side for the more land-based stuff. and then down here for your more endangered and dangerous animal stuff. And I don't know at the moment whether this series at least is going to go around the back of this way. We're going to need to see how the zoo pans out. But yeah, so that's where we're sitting at the moment in terms of going back to the car park. So what I've done here is I've put all the road markings in. They're just art shapes laid down. It's nothing particularly special. These are just your concrete pillars, your breeze block pillars, just forming the curbs, and then I've just carried on the railings all the way around. I kind of figured that you wouldn't want to put railings necessarily this side because this is where all the parking is, and you might want people to jump straight onto the path. So I haven't put railings on this side, but I'm tempted to still put them along the curb. Just for consistency, but I quite like this as it is. I mean, you can't cross the road because you've got the railings to one side anyway. So your parking spaces are just logs. It's 2 logs placed next door to each other, and then copied right down in rows. And they're about the same distance apart as each other, so they are identical. And then just to like mess up the area, I've just put some reeds and some bracken and some stuff down. Just to give that impression that it's a little bit overgrown, it's a little bit unkempt, but ultimately the cars driving across the fields and across the actual land itself would keep it relatively maintained, in the sense of grass wouldn't be growing and weeds wouldn't be growing because they'd be running over them, right? So it'd be pulling them up as they're going across. So yeah, I need to do 2 more rows, but I haven't at the moment because I wanted to know what's going to happen with this entrance area, to know whether this row is needed or whether this would need to extend up that way. Because ultimately, if you think that at the moment we've got 1,900 guests in the zoo, that in theory would be what, 900 cars maybe. So we would need space for 900 cars, and we definitely couldn't accommodate that in this kind of car park at the moment. And the general rule of thumb for that sort of thing would be that your car park is 3/4 of the size of the actual attraction that you're running. It's a general rule of thumb, and that would then allow enough space for the cars that you're looking for. So yeah, I've carried on down this way. I've carried on putting this wall in as well. And then this lower wall along this side, and just tidied up the areas along here. I've maintained the flower scheme from the very entrance. So it's the reeds, it's the pink and the yellows, it's the bracken, it's the beech tree sunk into the ground, just to give it a bit of bulk. And then that continues all the way down past the llama exhibit, and then this is obviously going to be a bit more backstagey for whatever exhibit and habitat is going to come into this space. But then that feeds quite nicely into this backstage area. So it's still got access, but it's not obvious. It's quite well hidden. And I'm quite pleased with how this turned out, actually. This sort of shed. It's turned out much better than perhaps I'd given it credit for. It's simple enough, but it's also what I like, the fact it's on 2 levels, so it's got this ramp, and apparently you can see llamas from here, and they like that. So yeah, and I've just done a little bit of work on this bit. So this plaza area was slightly down this way in the last update, so I've just shifted it down slightly. I made the habitat here a little bit bigger, just so we can accommodate what's going to be in here, whatever we decide to put. I'm tempted to put camels in this area, just because they are also really easy to look after. They could potentially share this shed, or they could at least have like a copy of the shed or a version of the shed the other side. You wouldn't need any additional infrastructure. You just need to change the terrain to sand. But the camels are actually really easy to look after. So that's my ramblings anyway, for this episode. And I think I needed a low-key episode. I needed a chill out episode where it's still been a lot of work. It's still been a day's worth of work, but it hasn't been intense work. It's just been pottering work as it goes dark. And that's what I needed. But then all of this pottering work then opened up this ability for me to go, actually, this is roughly where I want things in this area, and this now plans out the next couple of episodes, where we're going to be able to build a panda exhibit, we're going to be able to build the elephants, and we're going to be able to build the giraffes, and then we're going to be able to come over here and do the other house, the aardvark, whatever house, and then tigers and stuff. So anyway, I'm going to stop rambling and stop waffling on now because you're probably already bored. But if you do want to know when the next episode is, you know what to do. Subscribe, and you'll get notified when the next episode comes out. If you like what you're seeing, or if you've got any comments or anything like that, leave them down below. And I'm always there to reply anyway. Leave a like or whatever if you're enjoying the series, and obviously share it out wide and around and about if need be. But otherwise, guys, thank you so much for joining today. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye bye. Well, that was epic. That was a lot of work, and that was a long time in between updates, but I'm hoping that you're going to like what you see just as it starts snowing. Awesome. And we're in Tejidcam, and we're right at the entrance of the zoo, and I am going to walk you up to our new massive building. So here we go. We're going to walk past the sign, past all of the entranceway, and past all the people. We're going to grab our tickets, go through the noise music area, and we're going to come out at the entrance where we can look down at the reflection pool. So we know this already, and we can go left, or we can go right. Just look at those views, they look so good. So we're going to walk past fountains, and we're going to walk past the restaurant, looking lovely in the snow. We're going to walk past the flamingos, and we're going to walk past slithers and scales. People, that's slithers and scales. Amazing. Okay, and we're going to walk past the flamingos. Keep walking, keep walking, keep walking, keep walking, keep walking. And here we arrive at our very first look at the building, which is looking very grey against the very grey sky. Oh, it looks so good, doesn't it? And there it is. Crocs and Croaks. Look at that, Crocs and Croaks, the finished building. Well, I say finished. I keep finding little things that I want to tweak. So, yeah, at the moment, as far as I'm aware, as far as I'm concerned, it's finished. And so to start with, I've put these timber things on the outside, facing down, or facing out. And I like it because from different angles, it gives a different view of that wall. So, like there, it looks brown, and there you've got the gaps. So I like how it changes the aesthetics of the walls. But yeah, there's Crocs and Croaks in the snow, and we walk in, and it's all roofed off now. It's all looking good. It's all looking steamy because you'd think that it would be hot inside. Yeah, and I've put some skylights in so that we've got some light coming through. When I put the roof on, it was way too dark in here, so I've put the skylights in just to bring the light through. And then you've got the waterfall on the right hand side, which is looking all fake and lovely, and that was the intention. But I've just put some vegetation on the outside, just to sort of bring it to life a little bit. And then we can go down the stairs, and we can come to the underwater viewing area for the crocs. And again, I've just decorated all in here now, so this is all finished off and done. And I can see underwater here. Now, I don't know if the reeds would grow underwater. I just put them there because I needed something to bulk out the underwaterness, I guess. I need to go back and look at the videos from the likes of Mike Sheets and see what he does with his botanical gardens, because I think this would probably be a contender for what would be in there, right? But for now, it will do. Does it? Yeah, it's just vegetation. Decided to keep this wall blank. Otherwise, it was just too busy. I think it just needed a bit of blank space just to give a bit of a rest. I did copy this and put it on the other side as well, but it just didn't feel right. It felt better as a blank wall. So you walk back up, and I've put the beams both sides, and then we have our first sort of reptile froggy habitat. And again, I've just carried on with this theme of the vertical beams and the black beams that are on the windows. And here we are. So with our first things, I won't go through what each one is. We'll do that on the proper tour of the zoo when it's all done. But there's frogs in here, frog and a frog. Well, actually, no, that was probably a lizard. No, it's a frog. It's a Goliath frog. And then we can look out here at the crocs down at the bottom. Look, there he is, swimming away. We can come back out, and here we are. We open up into the croaks at the back. I'll admit we don't have enough frogs to be exclusively all frogs in these habitats. So we've got a mixture of things. There's titan beetles and all sorts going on, just to fill the space. But we've got the plant flower bed on the right hand side. So there we go with the with it being a bit dwarfing, makes you feel quite small against it. And then we come out to the bridge, and on the bridge we can look down at the crocs. There we go, there they are, bless them. Or we can look down the other side, crocs, out that way, or we can look out to the zoo if that's what we want to do. So when there's going to be exhibits and habitats and stuff down here, it's going to look awesome. And then we come into croaks, and then we've got all of our exhibits lined up at the back, along with some information boards, some education boards, bit of a rest area. So if you wanted to come and have a sit down, like I thought those guys were about to, but yeah, you can come have a sit down. Oh, I've just noticed it's clipping. Need to fix that. In amongst all of the plants, bit of a quieter area. Decided to keep this a quiet area rather than looking out at the zoo, because you've got the opportunity to do that downstairs. So I thought it was nice to have a bit of a quiet area. And then you can walk down here, and again I've just copied across all of this vertical beams along here, and the education boards. It's a big building, so there's a lot of people that are passing through. So in the game they lose happiness quite quickly, so it needs quite a lot of education boards. But you can look out at the crocs at almost their level from here, or we can come on down. This is now all kitted out with some benches, some plants, just to make it a little bit more friendly, a bit nicer of an environment. And we can come across and we can look out at the crops again, or we can go across to the exhibits. So we've got things like beetles and all sorts going on. I think this one's snakes. So yeah, that's all done. And again, I've copied across this idea of the beams. It's a consistent theme right across the building. And then we come out to this new plaza area, and this has come out really well too. I like this. So you can either come across and you can look at the flambeaus and the flamingos, and they're all sort of like right in front of you, and you can have a sit down, have a rest, or you can grab something to eat from the new food place that I've put together. So it's Pizza Pens. First time I've actually used the in-game signage. Might change that. Not sure yet. But either way, it's another modern looking building. Gives a bit of a flavour for what I want for the other building, the inverted commas ratty building that I'm going to put together. And then again, this idea of the beams changing the colour of the wall look. It's just so it looks good. It's just quite clever. It's quite a thing. I did toy with the idea of making them different sizes and angles and different, like turning them upside down and whatever to get some variation, but I quite liked it symmetrical, so I've kept it as it is. I've just noticed I've not brought the roof across enough. Yeah, so that is your Tejikam tour of everything, and there's the monstrosity building, looking all monstrosity like. So, but that's not all to show you. There's been some more progress. So around the back area, we've also got our backstage area. This is all coming together, so I need to do some more work to this as time goes on, and as the zoo expands. There's going to be space for buildings and whatever here. But for now, this is the backstage area. So this is the vet and the keeper area for everything that's inside the building. And so it's just keeping that theme of very grey, very concrete, very and then we've got a bit of a bin area, and then we've got another more storagey area, and I imagine this would be where the Crocs vet area would be, like how we've got the the bay areas over here. I would imagine this would be the croc equivalent with the skylights. And then you come round the road, follows round. You've got fire exit, fire escape for the building. So that would come down here, and this would be like your meeting point. And then this opens up to another concrete pad that serves the back end of the building that I've put together. So the modern looking restaurant-y type thing. Yeah, and so that's everything. So a bit of a look around. I know that some of you may want to know how I've done stuff, and there is a lot in this one. So if I miss anything, then absolutely just let me know. No trickery with stuff. I haven't used pieces in any way that they weren't intended or anything like that. It's all your normal setup. So your roof is all of your arch shapes. These are just the beams along with the glass. And then you've got, these are just normal beams, and that's copied right the way through. So yeah, there's nothing trickery. It's just all of the beams. Your windows are made up of the same, so iron girders as your main supports, and a beam that goes horizontally, and then your glass in the middle there. These are just the ropes that you find in the standard set, and I kept the bit clear. I wanted to keep this roof space clear. Topiary and the Arctic wood all along here. There's nothing out of the ordinary in here. I don't think. No. So downstairs we've already kind of seen, but we've got the beams and we've got art shapes. No, not art shapes. These are actually the plaster pieces, the non-gridded plaster pieces. And then we've just got the wood floor stroke roof of the game, log beams, plaster that's coloured a brownie colour, your standard lights. So yeah, again, nothing in there that's abnormal. The waterfall is made up of just rocks and plants, and your waterfall pieces. The only thing really to talk about here is how I've managed to put the pond in. So as you can probably see here, so I've left it there so you can see it. It's the glass habitat put into a rectangle, filled up with water, and then covered with pieces along here to make it look like it's sort of like contained. So that's how I've managed to do that. It thinks it's a habitat filled with water. For God's sake, and it's filled with water. Yeah, and it's just next door to the path, and it goes right up as far as against the path as it will go. So it has no other space. It would fail otherwise. And then there's a gap here because of the way that the buildings are, and the fact that there's a staff path that goes underneath us at this point. So the staff path comes around the outside here. So this is the edge of the actual tank, if you like. Yeah. So, and then it's just your hidden waterfall pieces underneath the water and everything, making that bit there. So then we've got the Arctic wood across here, and you've got the fencing, just standard fencing across, just to stop people from falling over the edge. Mix of all the different plants, but I've made sure that the plants that are in here are all that the crocodiles like. So there's nothing in there that the croc isn't a fan of, and you'll find that a lot of this stuff is also repeated in the croc's habitat as well. So the waterfall here is just a generic waterfall made up of rocks, and I have these waterfall pieces. They're the fountain pieces of different various sizes, just sunk right back into the wall. So you've just got the tops of the bits poking out. I think this is flowing a bit too fast, but again, you're dealing with what the game gives you rather than realism. In an ideal world, I'd like this to be more sort of sheer waterfall, the clear downward facing waterfall with a splash along each rock surface, but just can't achieve it in game, so I just dealt with this instead. It's babbling. And again, just to make everything move around places, it's just the fountain splashes that are turned upside down and sunk right in. And I've just also added them underneath the legs of the path as well, just to make it look like the water's going around and it's splashing around the actual area. So the habitat itself is just a typical habitat. I've managed to hide a lot of the horrific bareness with the bed, so that now works quite nicely. And I kept this bit blank, just like I said, just so I've got space for path if I need to bring pathing down. This makeup is all the plaster wall set, and this is just a beam, plank, beam. So nothing unusual there. Your bridge pieces, they're made up individually, so they're made up as a 4 long piece. The beam, a couple of pallets, planks that go across, and these are the planks the other way, and it just hides the edge of the path. It just makes it look a bit better. Nothing really in here. Again, the beams are going vertically, and then there's horizontal ones, but I've made sure that they don't cross over, so they actually stop at this point. Then there's a gap, and then it starts again, and that goes right across, and it just gives that nice break, especially as this top one goes right across. This one then is staggered. So we go downstairs, and again it continues that beam theme. I've just put the paw prints along the wall. It just breaks up the wall a little bit. I didn't want to put anything heavy on here. I just wanted it to be a wall, but it looked a bit blank and a bit bare, so I just put the paw prints, and it just gives the impression that that's the way you walk. You know, follow the paw prints, especially from the entrance as well, when you've got the paw prints on the floor. Just makes a bit of consistency there. And then these are just your normal benches. They're not aligned to a path or anything. They're just placed in the middle, and they're just carefully placed next to each other so they didn't clip out. And then your New World planters with just some plants in it, some ferns. And these are just your logs. The ceiling is just your log ceiling. And then over here, the planter is actually hiding a path anomaly in the background. But it looks good because then there's lights behind it, so at night the lights shine up and it sort of illuminates that wall, and that gives another effect again. The whole effect of it changing the colour of the wall as you move around. It also then has a light feature as well. And then you've just got your paw prints again, just to see you out. And I've put these boards quite high up. I did have them at various positions throughout the build, like down at the bottom, and then when this roof was higher they were up the top like they are on the other side, but I quite like them high up. Guests still read them, so it's still having an effect. Your speakers still do what they need to do as well, so they're still getting their education, so that's great. And then we come out to our plaza area. So this is what it looks like from the top. So it's just a randomly square thing. Well, it's random shape. But I've done this like dappled effect. Again, I wanted to carry this on from the wall. It just gives it a bit more of continuity. It brings all of this into this. But it also as well lends itself in design to the restaurant that's over here. So it's that theme that's running throughout the zoo now. That's quite nice. But it's also got like a glass front. It's also very flat faced, and it's still got this theme. But this time the planks are white because it contrasts quite nicely with the wood. So it gives that, especially in this light, as the sun's shining on it, it makes it a bit brighter. Makes the area a bit brighter. Because otherwise it was a bit dark. The brown wood was absorbing all of the light, so you've got the white that now makes it look a little bit brighter. So yeah, that's the tour. I quite like this actually. It's turned out quite nicely. It's been like the rims across the top, and then it's very clean. It's a very clean look. And I've also, by the way, just bought the plants from the restaurants over as well. Just again, it's that consistency. I think there's too many here. This was all done for the benefit of the shop percentage, but I might change that. So, but that's there's a few things I want to tweak actually as I've been doing the tour. I've noticed there's a few things that actually I think I want to change. But otherwise, it's turned out. Just take a shot. It's turned out really well. I really like it. There was a time in the middle when I thought, oh, I've bitten off more than I can chew. and this is a bit intense. It's a bit OTT, but actually it's turned out really, really nicely. And this view as well is nice. It's clean, it's effective, it's modern, but it's also just ugly, and it's good. I like it. Like, it's what I would imagine an area of a zoo to be. It's a bit overkill for a crocodile exhibit, but actually it's got multiple other functions as well. So it's turned out actually really, really well. Really pleased with it. So I hope you like it too. Let me know what you think in the comments and stuff below. Thank you so much for joining me today. Looking forward to the next episode where we're probably going to end up on the other side of the zoo and get some other stuff done over that side. Like I said before, I want to do giraffes and things. So thank you for your time. Thank you for joining me. If you want to know when the next episode comes out, you know what to do. Subscribe down the bottom. And like I say, leave a like or a comment, and I'm there ready to reply. So thank you, everybody. Keep yourself safe. Keep yourselves safe. I will see you all soon.